morning. Good morning. Good morning. How's everyone doing this morning? Here we are yet again, painfully honest, daily. Uh, I shouldn't be this tired on Tuesday, but yesterday, such an amazing, exciting day of news, things to be done. I was on a different live stream with John Rettinger and Andrew Edwards and some other folks, and we were talking about, of all things, LG, as well as Xbox Game Pass. But, it is what it is. So, yeah, here we are. It's Tuesday, the 6th day of April, 2021, in the year of our existence, 2021. I just finally got scheduled to get the vaccine. Well, I was scheduled to get the vaccine before, but I didn't end up going. I did cancel in time for somebody else to get what I was going to get, but now I'm scheduled for April 14th, and then this worldwide nightmare will be over. Will it? Will it be over? I'm not sure. Anyway, so here I am doing the thing. Couple of announcements before we get started. Once again, uh, some changes going to be happening to the live stream. We are at 10 a.m. my time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, United States. I guess that would make it 8 a.m. on the Pacific coast. And wherever you are, it's a different time, probably during the evening or something like that. And so we are doing this. A little bit earlier is better for me because then I have some of the day. Like by the time I would get done after we do it at noon my time, I would like have only a couple hours left in the afternoon before I had to go get my daughter. Anyway, so we are doing that, and we are also doing something special for the Painfully Honest Tech membership. Now, if you're not familiar with memberships are like, you pay anywhere from $2 up to, I think $15 is like the top. But you pay some money to support the channel and you get special things in return. And one of those special things, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be a Friday members only live stream every Friday, members only, and you guys will be able to do the question and answer again. It's Fridays, painfully honest daily, members only. That's one way that I can think of to give back to the community. So if you want to be a part of that, then there's a membership button down below. If you want to have some painfully honest merchandise, I suggest the coffee cups because yeah, I actually they're pretty nice mugs. I like this one. There's one with my face on it that looks really scary, and it didn't turn out the way that I expected it to. So you can also get a T-shirt with that design, as well as a T-shirt with a scary rendition of my face on it. So anyway, that stuff's going on. I'm trying to give back to the membership. I do really appreciate everybody's support, no matter whether you can do a super chat every once in a while, or whether you can do the membership thing, or whether you can just like be here and be a part of the conversation. Any of that stuff is totally awesome. Nothing is required other than your complete and undivided attention to every word that leaves my mouth. I joke. I joke. I joke. Anyway, um, so yeah, there's that. And then I have to once again give a shout out to the sponsor of this here live stream and all the live streams that I'm doing these days, Restream. If you're not familiar with Restream, Restream is a live streaming platform where you can stream to up to 30 plus different places at once. I think I'm streaming to 7 different places at once, like 2 Facebook pages, Periscope, 2 YouTube pages, Twitch. I guess that's only 6, but still, it's a lot, and that's a lot of social. So anyway, whatever social media platform you are a part of, Restream can put your live stuff up there. They have this web-based browser that I'm using that gives me the opportunity to do all these cool little things, like put these overlays up and do this chat thing and all that kind of thing. And honestly, it works really great. You can stream into Restream through OBS and other stuff like that. But I just have been going straight through their web-based platform. It's really great. You do have the chance to get a 7-day trial. Restream.io/join painfully honest tech PHT. No, Restream.io/join/PHT. Link in the description for this video down there. If you have some streaming to do and you go through Restream with my link, it tells them that I'm worth continued support, which would be awesome. Anyway, so what else do we have to do today? Um, well, I mean, I guess we can just get straight into it here and talk about LG a little bit more. And I'm going to let you guys drive the bus on the conversation a little bit more yesterday. I had a bunch of things to sort of say yesterday about LG. It's just been interesting. A lot of people have pointed out to me that all of a sudden everybody and their brother has has come into the fray to discuss LG. And it's not that it's not news, and it's not that it's not worthy they're not worthy of having that conversation, et cetera, et cetera. There are plenty of people who've been around for a lot longer than I, who have dealt with LG in a lot more detail in a lot longer period of time. I'm not begrudging anybody their right to have a conversation about this stuff, but I do think it's interesting because if just half the people would have talked about LG half as much, LG might not actually be leaving the smartphone business. And yesterday I was on that live stream that I mentioned before, and Edabong from Board at Work was on as well, and he'd kind of heard some of this discussion and about whether or not influencers had any impact on whether or not LG deserved to whatever. And so I think that well, he said his point was that LG made plenty of their own mistakes. It wasn't on the influencers to necessarily prop them up or anything like that. Um, and that's true. We talked about LG's mistakes yesterday. We don't have to go back into them in detail, but they did make the mistakes. And he brought up some other points that I think are worthy of talking about. He brought up the fact that LG didn't seem to know what product they were actually selling to whom. And when the G8 came out, and I remember that this was one of the things that MKBHD really kind of slagged the G8 for, was that sort of like hovering gesture thing that you could do with that, and that was kind of like not really all that effective, nor was it really all that necessary, and so they got slagged for that. They didn't follow through with that on any other devices. It's not really the thing that they need to do. They could, if they had doubled down on the things that they were doing well, like the headphone jack, serving different markets than a lot of other smartphone companies are serving, maybe they would have done better, but they didn't seem to have a very good sense of what kind of product they were selling to whom. And that's a good point. That's a good point. Um, he also said that it doesn't really fall on the influencers to to make up for the stupidity of the manufacturer. Fair point as well. But still, I mean, we've got lots of people chiming in over here. We've got Lou. Why does Lou have a car in his studio? Why is there a car in Lou's studio? Can anybody tell me? Does he drive in at the intro of the show, or is he just in a garage now? Is that how far we've fallen at Unbox Therapy, that we have to film in a garage? Anyway, of course, Lou has something to say, which, I mean, he reports the news on the Lou Later channel, so that's fine. This is from 3 days ago. I don't know if he's done anything since. Of course, Linus's group has some kind of snarky, ironic, millennial type thing to say about it. All little emoji tear or whatever. I don't know. Sometimes those guys piss me off. Uh, Saf has some things that he says, "Hey, look, there's me," without a thumbnail. How embarrassing. Um, Tech Talk TV, who I don't know, has a little something. Good Riddance says 7, who I don't know, but they only got 11 views. I guess this is one of those channels that I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. Um, the thumbnail says, "Our phones sucked so bad that we quit." Okay. Uh, Look, there's me again. We're live right now. That's us. That's us. And there's another one of me. I don't know why that's there. Um, CNN, Tech Chap, Easy Computer Solutions, good friend of the show. Uther Tech. I don't know Uther Tech. Um, so yeah, lots of people chiming in on the death of LG. And it is news, like I say. So it's not that they don't have any kind of reason not to discuss. But it's it's frustrating. I got my V50 somewhere. It's over there on the charging stand, and a lot of people are telling me over the past day or so that they're gonna be doubling up. They're gonna buy several G8s or several V60s or something like that. So they're ready to go. They're like prepping for the doomsday that's about to come. LG Mobile funeral. Okay, let's look that up. LG Mobile funeral. There we go. I can't type this early in the morning. Oh yeah, of course. So Easy Computer Solutions always does the funerals for. He's actually a minister, from what I understand. He's a nice guy. He really is a nice guy, and so he does these. He does these funerals, which I guess make people mad, but I think it's pretty funny. And then, of course, Fat Produce has got his Star Trek funeral over here. Juan has his funeral. Um, yeah, Tech Talk TV made. Oh, that's from a week ago. Um, yeah, my funeral, the funeral of my phones. This young lady, I don't think is talking about is talking about LG, but we got our friend Tech Odyssey here with his LG Wing video from 2 weeks ago. So yeah. I mean, um, and I know that friend of the show, alt tech, alt dad tech. Sorry, alt dad tech. Let's see. I want to see LG. I want to see what his title was. Alt. So here's his thumbnail. LG smartphone shut down. Goodbye. Not that anyone cared. Um, I mean, I don't know if that's true. Android is doing a sort of, I guess, post mortem, and then Alt Dad Tech is doing the Can You Trust. That's cool. That's cool. I'll take it as a you know as an honor. Um, but Aditya says to everyone cheering on LG Mobile's death, the future of consumer smartphones is at risk here. Everyone removing 3.5 millimeter headphone jacks, expanding memory, and inbox chargers. That is anti-consumer. That is correct, sir. It is anti-consumer, but that's the era of smartphone that we're in right now. Right now, we're in the era of the smartphone where where we will gradually lose features until the profit margins are still wide, but the output is in terms of build cost, et cetera, is not all that great. So, yeah, we have gone beyond peak smartphone. Yeah, we've gone beyond peak smartphone at this point, and are sliding down the other side of that slope, which you know is what it is. I mean, we're just the golden age has ended. Ivan says Easy Computer Solutions was a huge LG user. Recommend watching his LG funeral video. Yeah, he's been an LG guy for a long time, as has Juan Bagnell, Flossie, um, and others as well. It might be worth having. I don't know. It might be worth having a conversation amongst the people who actually amongst the people who actually covered LG on a regular basis, do a little live stream where we all talk about it. But uh, at the end of the day, I mean, I think we all know that it's just they didn't they didn't do what they needed to do, and for a long time the writing was on the wall. Will current Android or LG phones get Android 12? I mean, I don't think the V60 has Android 11 yet. So so I'm not gonna guess that Android 12. I mean, LG is always the slowest with operating system updates. They always have um I don't know why. I don't know why. They don't seem to put their resources where they need to be. And so I would not hold my breath for Android 12, which I guess I can't blame them for if they're not going to make the phones anymore. But yeah, Alejandro says, Juan Bagnell said something I found interesting. He attributed LG's demise to tech YouTubers using LG as a punching bag without actually using the phone, and poses the question of who is next. Well, we talked about that a little bit yesterday as well. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to lose if you slagged on LG, and LG was kind of like the redheaded stepchild of smartphones. Um, so I think there's some truth to that. I think from the perspective of the tech YouTuber, I think anybody who does this like over the course of a long time gets frustrated. And I think a lot of tech YouTubers were frustrated with LG because they kept making the same mistakes. And so maybe that contributed to it for a little bit. I don't know. But the thing about it is I really feel like, as I said yesterday, YouTube community um the tech YouTube community has a lot of power. And with that power, they can go ahead and do, you know, some people have been complaining that tech YouTubers only go for the things that get them views or make them money. And to a certain extent, that's true. To a certain extent, I don't doubt that at all. But the thing is, you can't really blame them. I mean, you gotta if you wanna grow your channel, if you want your channel to continue to grow, all that kind of stuff, you've gotta go where the views are to a certain extent. But I think you've also gotta have um, a little bit of your own brain power working. And I just think that a lot of times tech YouTubers, like, it's a follow the leader kind of game in many ways. As I said yesterday, and as I'll follow up, if a larger tech YouTuber um, slags a phone or a company or a series of their phones or something like that, um, then down the line, other smaller tech YouTubers are not going to look upon that phone favorably either. And you can take the laissez-faire economics view of this as like, well, the market determines whatever's right, right? Um, and maybe that is true. However, sometimes I think that there is a flaw in the way that YouTube reviews and sort of like non-structured editorial situations work, that is a flaw in how it presents itself. I've talked about this before. In a traditional editorial situation, right? In a traditional editorial situation, if you're gonna do a story about LG and the end of their run with smartphones, um, then you are going to than you're gonna have at a traditional, even at some place like The Verge or someplace like that. You're gonna have an editorial staff, an editor in chief, people like that who are gonna vet the story and who are gonna think about like, okay, what should we really be saying? What is really the story here? And much more. It's going to be much more thought through. Whereas if we're talking about YouTube, on YouTube there is no editorial staff for a regular YouTuber's content. So sometimes I think that there's not as much thought going into how to talk about these things as is necessary, and maybe that's part of the charm of YouTube. Um, but I think again, it's especially with the larger YouTubers, the Peter Parker conundrum comes into play. With great power comes great responsibility, and so if you are not aware of what you're doing and you're being look, I've been as guilty of this as anyone else, maybe more so than most people, of being just kind of like flippant and throwing out just like incendiary opinions to get a reaction. And I'm not saying that any like Marquez Brownlee definitely doesn't do that. I have done it in the past. I'd probably continue to do it. So I speak from this level of experience where it's just not the same. And so with an LG having to rely for a lot of the goodwill of on their of their smartphones, coming from uh, I guess non-traditional media, it's it's a little bit more of a shaky proposition for them. But it always comes back to the fact that they didn't know what product they had. They didn't know who their target market was, and they didn't sell what they had very effectively. So you can't say that it's the fault of the tech YouTuber. You can't say that. I mean, it starts with LG, but then there's like there was a there was a climate created around LG and their products when it came to the smartphones that was non-conducive to LG's success. I think it's looking good, not looping good, but um, and some people have said LG didn't care about smartphones, and they've got televisions and washers and dryers and everything else. I mean, in that in that estimation, LG and Samsung are really no different. LG's got washers and dryers, Samsung's got washers and dryers. LG makes parts for other companies to use in their products, and so does Samsung. I mean, they're very much comparable. But Samsung is, of course, the more successful, whereas LG is somebody described it yesterday as LG is the little brother of Samsung. Um, and so in the post-mortem of LG's situation, we look at it, we say they made their own mistakes. They did not learn from those mistakes. They seem to be somewhat tone deaf to what they were trying to do. They seem to not, have very much interest in marketing. And that was as damaging as anything else when it came to the lack of success of their smartphone business. They were more innovative than most companies. They were more they pushed the envelope a little bit more when it came to their designs and what they were trying to do. They were the first with a quad HD screen. They were first with 3 cameras on the back. They were first with a lot of different things that are now staples in Android smartphones. Whereas, and Andrew Edwards pointed out this yesterday, and I think it's a really good parallel to look at LG and how they handled things, and Samsung and how they handled things. Samsung at a certain point, back in the mid 2000s, it was Samsung, HTC, LG, like all these different companies that were coming out with their Android smartphones, and Samsung had a choice. They could either spend a lot of money in research and development to sort of do their own thing and figure out how to get to where they needed to be or where they wanted to be. Samsung, and this is not me like casting shade on Samsung. This has been proven in court, and Samsung paid the fines. Samsung decided the quickest way to relevance in the smartphone market was basically to copy Apple, to take a lot of what Apple was doing, put it into their smartphones, and sort of, skip doing it themselves and moving forward. And they did that probably knowing that they were gonna get sued and knowing that they were that they were gonna have to pay down the line, but at the end of the day, as Andrew said, Samsung paid $1 billion to be number 2 in the smartphone world. I mean, they were number 1, now they're number 2, yeah, it bounces back and forth, whatever. But they paid $1 billion in fines to stand on the shoulders of Apple when it came to improving their product and competing with Apple and moving forward. And when you look at what they were able to do, they were able, starting with the S6, right? The S6, they started to really improve their build quality. They started to improve the phones overall. They didn't feel plasticky or cheap anymore, and they started to move forward. They came out with the Note, and then from there it went on and on and on, right? And so Samsung put their money where their mouth was in terms of like, we are committing to the smartphone business, and this is the level at which we're willing to commit. Um, LG never made that commitment. LG had lots of great ideas. LG made some really interesting phones. LG served some parts of the market that weren't being served by anybody else, but they never went all in. They never went all in and said, we're going to market the crap out of this. We're going to take on Samsung. We're going to beat them. And at the end of the day, if you're not going to make that kind of commitment, then you're not going to win. And LG, just by virtue of how large a company they are, they were able to stick around to this point, but they are but they're one of the last left standing, and now they have been vanquished from the field. Um, so I see that we're talking about Marquez. Well, I mean, I don't think Marquez went out with a mindset to damage LG's business, but he does in fact um, he does in fact have that kind of power to not only influence people's pocketbooks, and as JC says, LG MKBHD doesn't have that kind of power. He most definitely does. There might have been a time where he wasn't aware of it, but I think he's definitely aware of it now, and is actually very cautious about how he approaches things. But the times that he has really sort of gone after a product, things have not gone well for those products. You look at the LG G8, which he was really not kind to. You look at the Razer Phone 1, which he wasn't very kind to. And those phones weren't successful. And I'm not saying like there's a trickle down effect. He is, for all intents and purposes, the most successful, the most watched tech YouTuber, the most respected tech YouTuber by many people in the audience, the community, right? So when he says something like that, it not only has the effect on the buying public, it also has the effect on the rest of the YouTube tech community, um, to sort of like it creates it helps create a conventional wisdom that then can sort of proliferate down the line. so that when you're a smaller tech YouTuber and trying to make your mark and get your views in and all that kind of stuff, and you've got a choice between buying a Samsung device and buying an LG device, and you look at the views and the discussion around the two. I mean, 9 times out of 10 you're gonna choose the Samsung device because that's where the views are. And I'm not gonna begrudge anybody trying to build their channels. I mean, building a YouTube channel, especially when talking about smartphones, building a YouTube channel talking about that kind of stuff, um, you have to, well, what I call, you have to draft off of everybody above you. So if everybody above you is talking about a certain thing and not another thing, then it's really more difficult to talk about the other thing, because you're trying to like end up in their like suggested videos bar on the side of on the side of the YouTube page. You're trying to end up grouped with them in like a search cluster, all that kind of stuff. So when doing this, I don't begrudge anybody looking at it. I mean, the YouTube algorithm isn't perfect. Um, but it it has a way that it works, and you can't ignore it. So, as Hugo says here, MKBHD has little impact on the market itself, but when it comes to the YouTube community, it's the other way around. And so, I would say that there's a circular logic there that says, okay, so he doesn't have a ton of influence over the market itself, but especially in terms of smartphones, he is one of the most influential people in, and smartphones, like, people get excited about smartphones, and they get a lot of their information from YouTube. So if he has an effect on the YouTube community and how they talk about this phone or that phone, then he's going to have an impact on the market over time. And so it it's just a very interesting conundrum. I mean, at the end of the day, I think, well, okay, so James says he couldn't help Sony. Well, we all know what Sony's problem is, at least as it applies to North America. Do we not? Sony's problem in North America is you cannot walk into a carrier store and buy a Sony phone. You cannot put a Sony phone on a monthly plan. You cannot do any of that kind of stuff. And so I think you can buy a couple of Sony phones at Best Buy. At least you could the last time I looked for a Sony phone at Best Buy. And in larger cities, you can buy them. Like, I know that they sell Sony phones at B&H Photo. I know larger cities have places where you can buy Sony phones. But in the United States and in Canada, I don't know how it works in South America, Mexico, those places. But in the United States and Canada, if you are not in the carrier store, I would say that like 95 point whatever percent of everybody who gets a phone gets the phone through the carrier store. And as Dion says here, like, the only way you get a Sony phone is you pay for it outright. You don't get a payment plan or anything like that unless you go to Best Buy and you put it on your Best Buy card or something like that. And most people are not savvy enough to even know how to change their SIM card. So most people are only buying what they can get in their carrier store. Sony phones are not in carrier stores, and so therefore 90 plus percent of the market is like not available to Sony in the US. Why they've made that decision, I don't know. Why they have not approached that, getting into stores. I mean, that was the OnePlus got into US stores, and we're talking about them more, a little bit more than we used to. But Sony as a phone manufacturer just might as well not exist in the United States. And over the past couple of weeks, a lot of people have been mentioning Sony phones, and they seem like they're really good phones. However, it doesn't, if I have to think about the content that I'm going to put out there, if the majority of my audience is North America. If the majority of my audience can't go can't go get the phone that I'm talking about, then it doesn't make like a lot of sense in terms of a content strategy to put a lot of coverage or money into covering that phone. Now, as soon as Sony gets into the carrier stores and people want to talk about Sony, I'm for it, right? I'm there. But until then, um yeah, unfortunately, however good Sony's phones might be, um they're not available. And yeah, as Ivan says here, you can get Sony phones at Best Buy, but the good ones you can't. You can get like their mid tier phones. So um, and the commentary. So Aditya says the commentary around OnePlus isn't great either. They do have a carrier dealership going for them, but techies still can't help but fall into the Samsung Apple cycle. Here's the problem. Now, OnePlus has the reversed problem that LG has, or had, I guess. OnePlus, I mean, if we want to continue to talk about Marquez Brownlee as like sort of the sort of top of the heap barometer for how people think and feel about smartphones, Marquez uh, just 2 years ago or a year before last had the OnePlus 7 Pro T. I don't remember which one. Um, they had he chose that phone as the best phone of the year. Now, why he did that has always been a question. I mean, they don't have great cameras, and he's a very big camera guy, um, and he was one of the loudest supporters of OnePlus phones way back in the days of like the OnePlus 5, and that kind of thing. When OnePlus had built their business out of this strategy, OnePlus in their early days, and this was Marquez Brownlee's words, not mine, they were 90% of a flagship phone at 50% of the price. That was the value proposition of a OnePlus phone when they started to gain recognition. But starting with the OnePlus 7 and 8, they moved up in they moved up in the price range. And so the value proposition was no longer as great because while LG has some really good phones, they still struggled with camera. They still struggled with other things. They still were not quite as good as the Samsung, the Apple, right? And if that's the case, then the value proposition of OnePlus is no longer there. It's no longer 90% of the phone for 50% of the price. It's 90% of the phone for kind of like the same price. Like the OnePlus 9 Pro is over $1,000. And if you're trying to sell a phone over $1,000 to a US market where they could get an iPhone or a Samsung phone for that money, I don't think you're going to convert very many people. You have to give them a reason to buy your phone. And there's nothing that gives people a reason to buy a OnePlus phone over an Android, of the ilk of a Samsung, or even go to the iPhone. Um, so OnePlus, I mean, OnePlus may be the next victim, if we want to put it that way. But the truth of the matter is, they've done it to themselves, just like Samsung did. They didn't understand their product, they didn't understand their market, they didn't understand their customer, and so therefore they are they're making their own mistakes that are going to drum them out of the business. They've already lost Carl Pye. They've already lost, some of their leadership. They've already lost their way in terms of what their products are. So, yeah, we've got a $5 super chat from Bushin RYUK. I still can't say that. I don't know what that name is supposed to be. Could you see LG come back to smartphones later on, maybe merging their department with another hardware developer like HTC? Well, HTC already sold like some of the most important parts of their business to Google, right? HTC, there was kind of like a power struggle in HTC, and the important parts, Google bought them, then they kept the stuff that they wanted and they sold them off again. And honestly, thinking about the fact that that LG over the past 4 years or 5 years has lost $4.5 billion in the smartphone market, I don't think that they could logically make the argument that they should come back. They gave it the old college try. In fact, they went to grad school. They were on their way to the PhD college try, and and they could not sell the phones. Um, and so unfortunately, I don't think they're gonna come back. I don't think they're gonna I hope that there are people out there, companies out there that pick up some of the flags that LG carried, specifically the headphone jack, but I don't really see that happening. Um, so that it's just kinda like I think LG did everything that they could, and they can't do anymore, and so they're on their way out. We got Danny Winget in the house, and Danny says, "They aren't losing their way, they're fulfilling where OnePlus always wanted to go. They always wanted to be a flagship company." I agree. I mean, you know, I think you're right that that was their plan. I just think that, you know, hindsight being 2020, there there wasn't a space for them there. Uh, you know, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I don't see them competing in that flagship space because there's to my estimation, they still don't compete dollars to donuts against the more established players in that $1,000 plus marketplace. That's kind of how I see OnePlus at this point. They may come this was the year. To me, this was the year. If they could come out with a phone that hit on all cylinders and was inarguably as good as Samsung, well, particularly Samsung, but Samsung and Apple, you know, and it's really a lot about the cameras. And I know, Danny, you do a lot more with cameras than I do, so I know you're much more, you know, with your finger on the pulse in terms of that. I just don't see LG or not LG. I just don't see OnePlus like making the value proposition at $1,000 that they had that was compelling to them as the underdog at 5, 6, $700. And and I think that ultimately that's going to be difficult for them to sort of I mean they're playing from behind, and I don't see them making up the ground in the way they want to. Um, Dion says LG should have pushed their DAC and marketed it to artist friendly device. Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I know that like with the V60, or not the V60, but the V40, they had Joseph Gordon-Levitt running around, and he was taking pictures, and he was recording sounds, and he was doing music, and he was all this other stuff. But it was like a very frenetic, confusing ad. Um and so and that was the only ad that they had. They tried to market the V series phone as the creator phone. The V series, like it had its own like multi-track recording capabilities. It had all kinds of different things that would be really attractive to the creator. In fact, Juan Bagnell went to CES, I think, 2 years ago with the V50 as his only camera. And he only edited on the V50, and he did all of his coverage with the V series phone and did a very good job, and it proved that it could be done. Um, but you know, I mean, Juan wasn't a member of LG's marketing team. They should have been recognizing this stuff. They should have been seeing like what kind of guerrilla marketing was possible, what kind of, you know, what the reviewers and the public were responding to with their products, and then doubled down on that. But they didn't. They didn't. And and it's, they just didn't do it. Here's an interesting question. Um, Ronald asks, "What makes a $1,000 phone camera?" Pixel lineup has killed that reason. So to me, what qualifies now, should there be a $1,000 phone at all? I mean, we could have that argument all day. I don't think the $1,000 phone is long for this world, except for like in the very boutique flagship market. I think the average phone, I mean, we can see it with what Samsung is doing this year. Samsung has said, so the S21 Ultra is the flagship. The S21, the S21 Plus are the sub $1,000 versions of that. So a $1,000 phone to me can't fall down on any of the major things. So screen, battery life, camera, um, build quality. There's probably one other. It can't fall down on any of those. And unfortunately for Google, in the early versions of the Pixel, fell down on at least one of those. The camera was always amazing, but on the Pixel 2, the Pixel 2 XL at least, the screen was a little dodgy. And so they've always had something that was a caveat about the Pixel phones. And so they put out four versions of the Pixel phones that were sort of at flagship levels. And then they also put out the Pixel 3a. The 3a sold like hotcakes. The flagship level versions didn't, and so now they're approaching a different marketplace, a different segment of the marketplace, which I think makes sense for them because they were not going to, unless they really committed. And I don't see, Google never really commits. They don't really commit to anything. They're very quick to ditch stuff, and we all know this. There's a whole web page that is like a graveyard for dead Google products. So Google, they either need to commit and go 100% all out and earn their place beside Samsung and Apple, or they need to find a segment that they fit into. And I think that they've found that segment. They found that segment in the 3 and 4A at like sub $500 prices, and now they found that segment at they found that segment for the Pixel 5 as like a slightly lower tier device. So I what we're seeing is the inability for a lot of people, a lot of companies to continue to compete at that $1,000 level, right? A lot of companies, you know, are not able to get that dollar amount. One of the reasons people didn't buy the LG V50 is that the LG V50 cost $1,000. The LG V50 was the first phone, at least in the US market, to have a 5G radio in it. And I mean, this was before anybody cared about 5G, but the LG V50 was the first phone to have a 5G radio in it. And it was $1,000 and nobody bought it. It's still a great phone, good battery life, good size, good performance. Everything about it was good, and it was future proof with the 5G radio inside. But nobody was willing to pay $1,000 for the LG V50. So they came back with the LG V60 last year, and said, "Okay, we're gonna change the value proposition. The LG V60 by itself, $800. We've changed a few things. We no longer have Quad HD plus screen. We have 1080p screen. We don't have 120 hertz, but we have the processor that we need to have to be competing in the flagship level. We have the monstrous battery with monstrous battery life. We have the value adds of the headphone jack. We have value adds of the option to get the dual screen case. So LG was hoping that the added value that they were offering at a sub $1,000 price. So you get the LG V60 and the case for $900. they were looking at that and they were saying, "Hey, well, maybe this is how we sell some phones. This is different." Samsung is doing their folding phones, and those phones are $1,000, $2,000. So maybe this is the way that we slip in there, right? And unfortunately, unfortunately, uh, the dual screen thing just didn't catch on. Now, things don't just miraculously catch on. You have to sell them. You have to market them. You have to make people want to actually own it. And LG just didn't do that. They didn't do that. They didn't go to the consumer and say, "Look what you can do with this." And so nobody bought it, right? So I see here that H7 Paris says Danny Winget did a comparison video V60 versus S20 Plus. Commentary is 90% of V60 wins. There was the base that thought the phones that bought the phones. If that community took up the cause, LG Mobile would still be here. Yes or no? I mean, for me, I have been an LG, especially LG V series evangelist for ever since the V10. I wasn't really like super active on YouTube at that time, but since the V20, the V30, all of those phones, so like better than 5 years, I have been an evangelist for LG's V series. And I don't set the world on fire, but I get decent numbers of views. But I always felt like, for the LG phones, I was getting views from people who were already sold on LG. And I don't know that I have the power in terms of like my reach to get to really be as persuasive as somebody who has a larger reach than I do. And I think, when you look at Juan Bagnell and you look at Jay Williams and you look at, I mean, Flossie definitely has a lot of influence, but I don't think that any of us who covered these phones regularly could do what the company could have done if the company had done it. So is it our fault for not really being evangelical enough about the phones? I don't think so. I don't think so. LG had a product that they needed to sell, and it was, we as content creators could have been helpful. Um, but at the same time, like, if LG is not going to spend the time and the effort and the money to market the phones, then I don't know that there's really anything like non like connected parties can do. Danny himself is here in the chat, so he says, "No, it wouldn't, because people will make their own decisions regardless of my thoughts or anybody's thoughts. Really, I use 150 to 200 images per each comparison, so people can make up their own mind. Most camera comparisons have 30 or 40." Yeah, so um, so yeah, it's I think that's right. People are going to make their own decisions. I think that, and I do think that there's a bandwagon-esque feel to how people make these decisions. I think that making a decision on $1,000 LG phone is a decision that a lot of people would not be comfortable making, because the, they've got other $1,000 options that are better bets, or at least they are perceived to be better bets. They've got market leaders in front of Samsung. Um, So even Louis Rossmann uses an LG G8. Well, does he have can he repair that? um, so Wish Waiter, yeah, says to win, LG had to copy Apple's approach instead of just superficially copying the end of product like Samsung did. Focus on security, privacy, animation, SDK, video, the areas where Apple does well. I think, to put a finer point on that, I think that what LG could have done in terms of their marketplace is that LG could have been the anti-Samsung. And in being the anti-Samsung, they could have been sort of like the Android Apple, but there are decisions that Apple made that LG was still on board with, in terms of headphone jack, focus on creativity. I mean, the iPhone is still a very impressive creative tool. But losing the headphone jack from the iPhone really hindered its ability until the dongles and everything caught up. The iPhone was really hindered by uh, the loss of the headphone jack in terms of its ability to be a creative tool. There were a lot of people that used iPhones every day as creative tools that relied on the headphone jack to be part of that equation. And until they could, get the lightning equivalent or whatever, they weren't able to do that work. LG could have been the anti-Samsung, quasi Apple of the Android marketplace. They could have been that. In fact, like there wasn't much in terms of what their hardware was, in terms of what the capabilities of the phones were to make that argument. It's just they didn't make that argument. And you know, they and David Rice is correct here. They never got the UI right. If if they would have gone with stock Android with a few LG flare like little flares here and there, people would have bought that phone. I mean, LG's skin of Android got better over time. The LG V60, what they're doing with the wing and the velvet, the skin wasn't nearly as bad as it was even just a couple of years ago. But yes, they tried to match Samsung with the gimmicks. You remember when Samsung used to have all these bells and whistles that were pretty much superfluous and useless when it came to their phones, like you could scroll with your eyes and all this other ridiculous stuff. And and LG tried to do that as well, when that wasn't really their bailiwick. That wasn't really what they were good at. And so they were competing with the wrong company, or they were mimicking the wrong company. Danny says, I did that LG V60 8K cinema video because I wanted to show people how good the 8K video was. Took me 2 days, and the return in views wasn't worth it because LG because but I did it because LG deserved it. Yeah, I mean, again, that's the thing. There is a dollars and cents aspect to it. I mean, when you think about it from a YouTuber standpoint, especially somebody who has the kind of business that Danny's built for himself, I mean, there's a dollars and cents component to it. It sounds like what Danny's saying is like that video was sort of a passion project for him because he wanted to show how good that footage could be. However, like the dollars and donuts side of it didn't match the output, which is a shame because you know if LG had been there sort of marketing that stuff, then it would have been an easier sell. It would have been an easier sell to make that video and to spend that time. And I totally get that. I mean, a lot of people have been saying, oh, you shouldn't be choosing like what's going to get views and what's not going to get views and what's going to make you money, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I think it's a different equation for a different like each different level of YouTube has a different equation. I think for somebody who is starting out or has gotten to a mid level, like sub 100,000 subscribers, but is on the come up, I think that covering things like LG is going to would really help you. It would differentiate yourself. You spend time on that. You're not making a ton of money at that point, so the time to dollars thing doesn't necessarily make as big a difference because you're trying to build. But when you're talking about, someone like Danny or someone who's a bigger YouTuber who has projects that, yeah, and they're putting food on the table for their families by making these videos and taking on these projects, it does come into play to a certain extent. And I totally get it. I totally get it. And at the end of the day, LG could have made it an easier argument than they did. Um, so, uh, David Rice says Samsung has been winning on the Android side despite their missteps because they became the best at the basics. They streamlined the bells and whistles so they could appeal to the casual and niche. I think Samsung did a very good job of walking the line between what the really diehard Android fans like, which is the customizability and just the geeky aspect of it, and then the usability factor for the folks who didn't want to get into the weeds like that. So yes, I think you're right. I think you're right. There was that aspect of it, but I think you can't miss the fact that Samsung really did decide to look at what Apple was doing and copy it, and that gave them a big leg up. It was a risk, and you know I'm not necessarily casting shade at Samsung because they got taken to court and it was proven in the court of law that that's what they did. But they were still able to hold on to the core the core aspects of Android that attracted both kinds of buyers, right? So yeah, they've done very well at improving their products, they at trying some things, but then they I still don't know about the AR stuff that they throw in. It's cool that they do it, but they still throw in some features into every phone that like somebody if you buy the phone, you'll try it once, you'll never use it again. But maybe it's good for getting through a news cycle. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, Samsung has. I think the thing that Samsung has done that a lot of other Android manufacturers did not or could not do was just basically push all of their chips to the center of the table and say, we are going to be number two or number one, and we have the war chest in terms of the size of our conglomerate, everything that we do. We have the size to be able to do that, so we're pushing everything to the center of the table, and we're going for it. And it worked for them. I mean, as Andrew Edwards said in the stream that I was on with him and John Rettinger yesterday, they spent $1 billion to compete and get to number two, and no other manufacturer ever really did that. So I think that I think that that's ultimately what made the difference. Alan says that Travis MCP did a great video on using an old LG phone that could replace a laptop. Yeah, I mean, it's the same. I agree, and like I said, Juan Bagnell went to CES with only the LG V50 as his creative tool, and was able to get through and make great coverage. So there was never any real problem with the capabilities of the LG phone. There was never any problem there. The problem for LG was there was a knowledge gap, and part of that was because of their lack of marketing, their lack of just I don't know. They seem very very like nonchalant about their business with the smartphones, which in a market that was that competitive, you can't really just sort of sit by. And I don't know if that's what was happening internally, but that's how it looked outside. Was that they just weren't really doing everything that they could to get people interested in buying their phones. And they did have the boot loop issue that still comes up 5 years later, still is an issue. They didn't address the boot loop issue in as aggressive a way as Samsung did with the Note 7. And Samsung played that Note 7 situation in terms of PR and sort of building and keeping their customer base. They played that from a PR standpoint textbook. I used to teach this. It's like the Tylenol scare of 1986 when somebody was putting cyanide in Tylenol capsules, right? And I think 6 people died in the Chicago area. Um, and Tylenol, the parent company, every they pulled every single bottle of Tylenol capsules off the shelves worldwide. and then they said, "We're not gonna put them back into the marketplace until we know that they can be safe." And Samsung did the same thing with the Note 7. The number of fires that the Note 7 caused was small comparatively to the number of phones that were out there. But Samsung pulled the phones back. They recognized a design flaw. They tried to fix the design flaw. It didn't get fixed. And so they pulled the phone off the market, and that was it. They lost so much money. They lost so much money out of doing that, but I think they kept their customer loyalty and respect because they were willing to go that extra mile to do what needed to be done in order to make sure that their customers believed that they were being safe. Now, LG's boot loop issue, I think, was more widespread by far than the Note 7 explosions, and they did do things to try and fix that problem. I can't remember exactly what they did in terms of fixing the boot loop problem um, or helping the people who were having that problem. But but then they started after that, they offered 2-year manufacturer warranties, which, they didn't promote. So yeah, it ended up not being as successful. James says, Samsung hired a well, I'm not gonna say hired a are you saying a US marketing and PR, firm to do their US marketing as opposed to LG that kept their marketing in-house or within Korea? That might be part of it as well. I mean, it is important to have people who really know the marketplace where you're trying to sell, um, you know, be there and helping you sell in that marketplace because I've had family members who were in the military who lived in Korea. I know enough about life in Korea to know that what's going to sell something in Korea is most likely not the same kind of thing that's going to sell something in the United States. So yeah, I think it's important from a marketing standpoint to make your marketing uh, global in the sense that you're selling things to people with people who understand that market. So yeah, um, yeah. The Moto X was a really great phone, and then the Pure Edition, people loved that as well. Um, Moto went from the Moto X to the Moto Z Force as their flagship. And unfortunately, the Z Force, man, I don't know. It was a cool idea. The Moto mods and that whole thing. And I did, so we've been talking about the headphone jack and how Apple was the first to take away the headphone jack. It's not actually true. Motorola took away the headphone jack with the Z Force. Because it was a very thin phone. There was no room for a headphone jack. A couple of months before the iPhone 7, the 7 came out, so Motorola gets credit for taking away the headphone jack first. Although I think that most Motorola phones, at least the mid-tier phones, have headphone jacks now. So Danny's got some of the lowdown here. LG and Samsung's primary marketing teams are all based in Korea. The US does have their own campaigns, but ultimately answer to Korea. Yeah, that's the sense that I got as well. Having talked to people in LG PR or in Samsung PR and marketing. LG does have people in the US as well, but I just don't think that it's on the same scale as Samsung. I think that um, LG's departments aren't as I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be as big an operation in the US as what I got the impression Samsung's was. But I don't know that 100%. Um, Aditya Anand says, buy LG smartphones and to save it from dying. Man, that's that ship has sailed. unfortunately. Um, Unfortunately, yeah, I think if you wanna keep using LG smartphones, like, buy a few of them and keep them in the freezer or something. Because ultimately, uh, we knew something was up even coming into 2021. There wasn't as much discussion about LG. There was, all the V set that there's not gonna be any more V series, there's not gonna be any more G series. Maybe LG is gonna go to mid-tier phones with with 7 series Qualcomm chips instead of 8 series Qualcomm chips. There was a lot of talk here, there. Then they had the rolling phone that they brought to CES, which looked really promising and would have been a really cool thing to see. Um, but then just, in the ensuing couple of months, nothing really happened. Nothing really happened. So then we hear that they're going to sell to a Korean company, their North American thing, and then we hear that falls through, and now we hear this. So I think um, I think that unfortunately, that ship has sailed. I have not reviewed the wing. They did send me a wing. They did send me a wing, and I have it, but I haven't reviewed it yet. I mean, it kinda came to me at the same time that my S21 Ultra did, and I just, I was kind of in a holding pattern where I was waiting to see what would happen with LG, like, because again, does it behoove me to cover the wing when, I don't know what kind of availability there's gonna be for it. I don't know if people are gonna buy it. I don't know if, I've used it. It's a very interesting phone. It's a very cool phone, and it sort of said to me the same thing that the Galaxy Fold says for Samsung, which is that there's a cool idea in here somewhere that could go somewhere, but I don't think that the wing was the final iteration that would be worthwhile for the most people. So yeah, if there's enough people out there who really want me to look at the wing, then I'll do a video on it, but I just don't know if it makes a lot of sense at this point. Um, so yeah. Uh, Giovanni says, "This is exactly what I was thinking. Now the tech reviewers are trying to cover for LG for the views. They didn't even give a damn about the things before they the things they innovated before." Well, I mean, again, yeah. Um, LG, man, I don't know. It's like I remember the G4. A lot of people were talking about the G4. A lot of people were excited about the G5. The G5 came out and it was a complete disaster. And I think that was the beginning of the end of YouTubers really paying a lot of attention to LG. And then, you hear stories uh Edabong from Board at Work told the story of like people going to the G8 information meeting, and they were showing them the little gesture navigation things, and then they were like, "Okay, now you try." And everybody, like, the biggest tech YouTubers, the biggest phone reviewers out there were like all trying to do it, and then they would all raise their hands and be like, "Hey, this isn't working." Um, if they would have just like made the G8 a super solid phone with stock Android and the quad DAC and sold it at $700, I think it would have been a different story for them. But they kept trying these little tricks, these little gadgets, these little things. So yeah, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. What do you want? I wish you could thumbs down videos before even watching them. Oh, because people are, it's hard to say that people are like bandwagoning the discussion of LG. I mean, it is a big story. When a major company steps out of a marketplace, it is a big story. So people have the right to cover it, I guess. Um, so, but what I'd be wary of is people out there who didn't pay much attention to LG in the first place, like kind of, crying crocodile tears over the end of LG. I don't know if people are doing that. I haven't really been watching the videos, but um, yeah. Bill says, with LG's exit, is there a flagship premium phone with a 32-bit quad DAC headphone jack and expandable storage? No, no, there is not. The Sony Xperia 1 Mark II does have a headphone jack, as far as I know, and I've done tests with headphone jacks, like between the Samsung S10 and the Pixel 3a. I did just a straight up test with the headphone jacks where I had the same music playing on both, and I just swap back and forth the same headset. And the headphone jack that's in the 3A, and I would guess probably likely the 4A as well, is nowhere near as good as what was in the Samsung Galaxy S10. So, and the S10 wasn't like a special headphone jack. I mean, it was a good quality product. The DAC was good, the amp was good, et cetera, but it wasn't at the level of what LG was doing with the quad DAC and all that. So, at the end of the day, I mean, if Samsung is beating the 3A, then you have to imagine that most of the headphone jacks that are in the mid-tier phones are going to be of a similar quality. Um, Alyosa, is that how you pronounce your name? Says reminds me that the Asus ROG phone has the same Saber amp that the quad and a quad DAC as well. So that is a good point. I had forgotten that the ROG phone had that spec. So thank you for reminding me. The only problem is, again, the ROG phone is something that you have to buy outright. You can't go to the carrier store and buy yourself a ROG phone. And that to me is ultimately kind of a drag. But knowing that that's the case, I might grab myself a ROG phone just to really kind of do a test. So yeah, that's a good point. And I don't even know. So I don't even know that the ROG phone has flagship specs, but to me, at least somewhere in my mind, that like the idea of flagship also has to do with availability, and because I would classify the ROG phone as like a boutique specialty phone as opposed to a flagship because it's not available everywhere easily for everyone. So that's kind of where I fall with that. But it does have all the specs that you need and then some. Um, to really you know make it a phone worth talking about. Got a super chat from uh, Michael. Thank you, Michael. About a month ago, AT&T stopped letting me use my G8 on their network after a year of doing so. I have the G8 model variant sold by Amazon. Weird. Yeah, I was it like a dual like CDMA and GSM kind of thing? I hadn't heard about that, so I don't know why that would happen. But yeah, that's too bad. Danny says problem with the audiophiles are just too small a segment of the consumer base. LG didn't convey how good the DAC was for the average consumer. Zero marketing on that feature at all, and that's right. And I think that I have friends who knew about the quad DAC and were buying the LG like back the V20, the V30. Friends who were big music heads who were buying the LG V series simply for that feature. And I think if LG had marketed that feature more so, to the general public, but also to other folks out there, I think if LG had marketed that feature and really said, if you love music, this is the phone for you, that would have been compelling to the more casual, audio enthusiast, as well as the folks who are going out there and buying digital audio players that, Sony makes a digital audio player that costs like over $1,000. So there are people out there that are doing that, and there's nothing in the phone segment other than, well, now the Asus ROG phone, but there was nothing in the phone segment that could come close to the kind of quality that you could get out of a digital audio player, except for the V series. And so I think, as you say, Danny, like if they had marketed that feature, if they had said, you know, if they had said, Apple took away your headphone jack. If you love music and want to use your great headphones or want the best audio quality possible, then come on over to the LG side where we've got not only a headphone jack, but one that's, you know, n number of times better than what Apple was giving you. They could have sold more phones. They could have sold more phones on the cameras. They could have sold more phones on, a lot of the features that they had, but they didn't sell the phones. It's really frustrating. Hugo says, "Can't blame them. My brother-in-law can't hear the difference between his Galaxy AirBuds and a pair of Stax SR1." Well, I mean, for the average person, I can understand that. I can understand that. I mean, it takes a long time to build to train your ears to hear the differences. And yeah, John Darko, who's a YouTuber that talks mainly about like home audio stuff, is yeah, he uses a V40. He talks about it all the time. He's a really great YouTuber as well. I don't watch him all the time, but I have watched a lot of his stuff, and he's very good. Um, so the V series, and he is like, if you want to talk about like high end audio geek, like he is the perfect example. And the V40 was his choice of smartphone. So yeah, I mean there are ways out there that it could have been done, but unfortunately it didn't happen. Um, so we talked about Louisville Tech. We talked about the Pixel headphone jack. The Pixel headphone jack that comes in the A series just isn't a very high quality headphone jack. It's there, you can use it. I think for the price range, and it works, but if you A/B that headphone jack and an LG V series headphone jack, your mind might explode. Your ears would curse you for what you've done to them, going from one to the other. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is like a headphone jack is not a headphone jack is not a headphone jack. There are so many different varying levels of quality, so many different price points when you're talking about buying the parts for the headphone jacks. It's just there's a lot of different stuff that goes into it. And to LG's credit, they went the extra mile and they continued to try and improve that quad DAC year over year over year. So I mean, I give them props for doing that, and I wish they would have. I wish they would have sold it. I wish they would have gone to people and said, this is why you should buy our phone." Because even though the audiophile market might not be large enough to make a huge difference, there are enough people who loved listening to music, and I would have loved to have seen that as like a pushback against the proliferation of the proliferation of wireless headphones, and the narrative now becoming that wireless headphones are just good enough. And who cares about the other however many, like 25% that you lose, and that wireless headphones are the future, and you might as well get on the bus, or whatever, old man shut up. The things that I hear all the time. Yeah, Danny's got a good point here. They could have had listening stations at Best Buy and other carrier stores where you could have had headphones, plugged into one phone versus the other, or you could have hooked up your AirPods to an iPhone, and then had not even a great set of headphones attached to a V series, and heard the difference. I mean, that would have been really compelling. That would have been really compelling. But see, LG didn't sell their phones that way in carrier stores. LG sold their phones in carrier stores by offering incentives to folks that work there, by offering, 2-for-1 deals and that kind of thing. So they kind of accepted well, Samsung or Apple is too expensive, so we can get a 2-for-1 deal on the G7, so we'll take that. That was what LG seemed to settle for when it came to being in carrier stores. So your wife refuses to use headphones for anything. Well, some people are like that. Some people are like that. Some people get like freaked out by headphones, you know? Some people don't like them on their head. I remember the first time I put on like active noise cancellation headphones. Man, it felt weird. It was like hyperbaric chamber weird. So I get it. Some people don't like the feel of headphones on their head. I can't, you know. But yeah, it does make it hard on the person who wants to listen to something that their significant other doesn't want to listen to. Um, Good bang for the buck. DAC, Apple USB-C to 3.5 millimeter adapter, also works for Android and Windows. I have never done a comparison between USB-C and Apple dongles, but I probably should, because there is, if it's not the well, there are some kind of electronics within those dongles that do convert the sound in some way. I'm not going to I think I know, but I'm not going to say because I'm not 100% sure. But there are electronics within them, and it could be, I think, with the iPhone 7, I think that the lightning dongle that came with the iPhone 7 was doing the D to A conversion. I think that they were like, it was coming out of the lightning port digital and being converted to analog right there inside the dongle. I could be wrong, and I don't know if it still works that way, but it would be like, it might be time for me to get into stuff like USB DACs and USB dongles and that kind of thing. I mean, the thing that people complain about sometimes that I don't understand why more people don't complain about, um, is that when Apple took away the headphone jack, they eliminated the ability to listen to music through headphones and charge your phone. And you would have thought, I mean, look how much discussion we've had about taking the charger out of the box, right? You would have thought at the time that that would be a big issue, but it wasn't. And I never really even thought about it until I was looking for dongles on Amazon, and I was doing some top 5 this, that, or the other things videos, and and there were a lot of people in the reviews of these dongles that complained that you couldn't charge. So there are a lot of like 3.5 millimeter lightning adapters. So you can plug the lightning in and you can plug the 3.5 millimeter in, and you can charge and listen to music at the same time. So, and and the thing is, like, the headphone jack is hanging by a thread, and this is what makes me mad. The headphone jack is hanging by a thread because Apple, who are very good at doing this, and this is one of the reasons why they're hugely successful, Apple changed the narrative about the headphone jack. Apple said the headphone jack was old technology, and they had the courage to get rid of the old technology and go into the future. Now, yes, the headphone, well, the 3 point, not the 3 point, this the 1/4 inch cable has been used since, I think the number I saw was 1877. And it was used when telephone operators had to plug, one end in one jack and the other end in the other jack to connect a telephone call, right? And so, yes, but there's a lot to be said for straight wire connections. One wire connecting to another wire, 2 terminuses connecting with one thing. Whenever you take into account software and getting through the air to a Bluetooth headphone like that. It's much more difficult to achieve the same kind of quality. So, um, that's why the headphone jack has suffered in the ensuing years. There was nothing wrong with the headphone jack. The potential of the headphone jack was so much higher in terms of fidelity than the potential of the wireless headphones at the time. So they were really selling us a bill of goods by saying that they were taking us into a better future, because at that time the future was not better. Wireless headphones were nowhere near as good in terms of sound quality as straight up headphone jack. We got a $10 super chat from Bushin. Okay. Just use Bushin. Okay, I'll do that. Can you briefly talk about the power difference between Apple A chipsets and Snapdragons? I, I don't really know a lot about the power difference between the two. I mean, what I do know, at least conversationally, is that the A series chips use power and more efficiently than the Snapdragon chips. And it's kind of the same thing as, PC parts have to be built for use with multiple manufacturers, other stuff. And so a lot of times PC related stuff is overbuilt and more powerful on paper, because it has to overcome some of the inefficiencies that are going to come by combining them with other pieces that aren't made by the same companies or doing the same things. Whereas Apple builds everything, so they can make building inefficiencies a priority. And because they control all of the production, it's something that they could do. But I don't think that totally answers your question, but that's kind of how I see it. Um, yeah, Bill Bill echoes my experience with the noise canceling headphones. Let's see. So, Oskirt, since Apple is able to completely control everything from the chip to the software that runs them, they cannot. Yeah. Okay. So kind of echoing what I was saying there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're not wrong, Sam. Uh, Technology is always a sacrifice for sure. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's, well, maybe not arbitrary, but it's not always like the consumer that gets to have a say in what that sacrifice is, if you know what I'm saying. So those sacrifices are not always consumer friendly. We've talked about that in terms of taking away the charging bricks from the phone boxes, and the sort of it's a consumer hostile move, right? They say it's for this reason or that reason, but ultimately the consumer is the one that has to bear the brunt of that change. I mean, if the iPhone has been shipped with a USB A to US to Lightning cable up until the iPhone 11, and then Apple says we're not going to give you the charger anymore, but the last time you bought an iPhone was the iPhone 10s, then you don't have a charger that's going to work. So you have to buy a charger. See, so that's where their arguments, like a couple of moves down the line, that's where the arguments fall apart. Um, but anyway, folks, hour and 38 minutes, man. I keep trying to keep this to an hour so that it's a manageable amount of time, but the conversations keep getting better, and I really do appreciate it. This was a really good conversation. I appreciate everybody being here. Remember that on Fridays it's going to be members only Q&A on this show. If you want to spend $2 to become a channel member and be a part of those Q&As, I would really appreciate it. Um, I've got a timer right here. That's the thing. It's like right on the screen. I can look at it. Um, but yeah, members only Q&As on Fridays for the daily show, as well as I'm going to have some like fire sales and other kinds of things that members can get into. Minimum $2 barrier to entry. Any support that you can give, though, is awesome. I thank you guys who are giving out the super chats today. Very, very appreciated. Thank you guys who've all. and when I say guys, it's a gender neutral guys. I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to, exclude women. But but the thing is, at the end of the day, everybody who shows up and supports and chats and watches or anything like that, I really, really, really do appreciate it. And Bob is already on me about the new PHT walled garden. Hey man, guys got to eat. Guys got to eat. I got to pay the bills. I got to build the empire. So anyway, you guys have been awesome once again. Thanks so much. I'll be back with another daily show tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. Central, or 10 a.m. Central, and 8 a.m. on the Pacific side of the United States, and whatever time zone you are in, wherever you might be. Thanks once again for hanging out with me, guys. I really do appreciate it. Once again, my name is Jason, sometimes known as the JTL. This is Painfully Honest Tech, Tech So Honest It Hurts. Another edition of Painfully Honest Daily.